118 of the original 122 entries started, led by 5 times winner of the event, Paddy Hopkirk. He was followed by the Fourth Hope, the new twin-cam Escort, being driven in its second international with Roger Clark and Jim Porter in the controls. And next away was the Swedish pair of Jitterbring and Parson in the second Works Cooper S. A minute and a half later, the first incident of the rally took place when the number 4 seed, Andrew Cohen and Brian Coyle in the Sunbeam Imp, having travelled only a quarter of a mile from the start, were hit by a non-competing car and put out of the event. Unaware that this had happened and that she was now leading the Roots Challenge, Rosemary Smith came down the ramp in Ballymena with her co-driver, Margaret Lurie. By the time the first stage ended at Blessington on Saturday morning, Hopkirk realised that Clark was to be the big problem.
Roger is the big challenge?
Oh, yes. I mean, he's 150 horsepower and he's a very good driver. I mean, this car, this Escort should be unbeatable.
And just to resolve that question, they set off, led here by Paddy Hopkirk for another 9.5 hours of fast, hard driving. And Clark in car number 2 wasn't letting up any. Adrian Boyd in car number 6 also had damaged lamps, but it didn't restrict his driving. Car number 9 is driven by Rosemary Smith, here negotiating the tests near Craignamanagh. Number 11 is Desi McCarthy, who apparently got himself into some difficulty. His car was later to develop clutch trouble in another test. On to Clockeen in County Tipperary. Number 12 is Tony Chappell, making it look easy. Number 15 is Ronnie McCarthy, still very much in the hunt. And Alan Rees, number 18, never far down on the leaderboard. Hopkirk pulled back a minute on Clark here, but as they arrived into Killarney for the first overnight stop, the Englishman was still about 2 minutes clear. However, after a well-earned night's rest, Hopkirk was none too confident of his ability to catch up.
Paddy, any chance of pulling back the time on Roger Clark?
Oh, yes, it's been quite easy today. I've only been going slowly up to now, like hell.
Now came the crucial stage, the speed test in the Tim Healy Pass. Crucial for Hopkirk in car number 1, for it was here he must make up that time on Clark. But the Englishman was in unbeatable form in his Escort and was consistently faster than Hopkirk. Boyd and Smith were also holding their own, but not reaching speeds that would bother Clark. Number 18 again, Alan Rees, going strongly enough to make sure his name will be staying in the top 10. This was the test acclaimed by almost all the drivers as the most imaginative and one comparable to the best in any rally anywhere, and one well handled by Dubliner Dermot Carnegie in car number 41. It became more inevitable as they returned to Killarney that Clark's Escort, bar an accident, was uncatchable. His confidence was unmistakable as he prepared to set off on the long haul to Larne. The clerk of the course had intimated that the sting would be in the tail of the rally, but when the 80 or so remaining crews set out from Killarney on Monday morning, all they knew for certain was that ahead of them lay 22 hours of hard, almost non-stop driving. Hopkirk went through Hospital, County Limerick, confessing that he had no answer to Clark and hoping for rain. When Jitterbring turned over his car and retired, Rosemary Smith moved up to 7th place. Further back the field, Larry Mooney, George Windrum and Ken Shields had only to finish to assure the 500 Motor Racing Club of the Club Award, and Frank Fennell was inching away from Dermot Carnegie for the leading Republic of Ireland Crew Prize. Only hours from the finish, the clutch on Hopkirk's Cooper S packed up, and that was the end of the rally for him. Clark went on to win by more than 10 minutes from Adrian Boyd, and Rosemary Smith was third, her highest placing ever in the circuit.
The 1969 rally signalled the end of the Paddy Hopkirk era. He was outgunned by the Ford Escorts.
Paddy Hopkirk in the Mini Cooper. Paddy, how are you?
I'm very well. My arms are very sore.
Yeah. Was the car, you were telling us before the start, Paddy, that the car you'd reckon was going to be pretty uncomfortable and not very nice. Did it turn out that way on the first night?
Well, the first 7 stages we were slower than last year because we were trying a new tyre that just arrived before the start. It's a new experimental racing tyre, and it was absolutely hopeless.
The power game was now on in earnest in rallying. The Ford Twin Cam was once more too powerful for the rest.
The winner of the 1969 Circuit of Ireland Rally.
That same year, there was also one Billy Coleman, remember?
Anger was the starting point for this year's circuit, and on Good Friday evening it was a cold and windswept location as the 167 crews lined up to face 5 days of driving over 1,500 miles with over 600 of them on high-speed special stages. Favourite and winners for the last two occasions, Roger Clark and Jim Porter, were first away in the Escort. Then 1 minute behind came Ulstermen Adrian Boyd and Beattie Crawford, the top private entrants and previous winners. They promised to be Clark's main rivals. Or would it be Derry's Cathal Curley, who was being co-driven by Enniskillen chemist Austin Fraser, a very formidable crew? The first Swedish crew to leave were Heinrichsen and Karlström in a rally cadet. Rosemary Smith and Alice Watson were carrying the hopes of British Leyland in the new Austin Maxi, which was having its first international rally. Rosemary was trying for her 10th ladies' prize in the circuit. In the first stage at Strangford, Peter Cullen and Paddy McClintock's Cooper S lost its steering and crashed. Ronnie McCartney went out with a blown head gasket, and Ronnie White had a drive shaft come away from the engine. The first three were out of Circuit 70. Shortly after midnight, the cars crossed the border at Cullerville, where Roger Clark was first through. He had his troubles with a jammed throttle cable, but he managed to drive.
Drive it on the ignition.
And there were other stories coming in. Rosemary Smith reported on what she saw at Altnamacken.
I saw one of them off in the last. I think it's Adrian Boyd was off.
It is.
It's the start of the last.
Yes, Adrian Boyd.
Adrian Boyd went off in a fairly big way. He got cut out, I think, with a wee bump just before a right-hand corner. Yeah, he might get on, though.
6 more stages, including the 24-mile Sally Gap, followed before it was breakfast time at Blessington. All enjoyed the break, some the chat.
What?
You all right?
Yeah, you're not near us. We're all right.
We got out of the tarred tracks in the centre of the road onto a wee bit of loose gravel on the side, and the car slid over the edge and dropped into a bog about 6 feet down on its side. So we had to wait for about till the crowd gathered around us, and eventually we got about a dozen people around the car, drove it back into the bog, and they all pushed while I drove up the bank.
The Circuit of Ireland was toughened still further, and it gained European Championship status for the first time. Television was also showing an interest in the sport, while slowly the ordinary car driver took notice of this modern, international and developing sport. The circuit then centred on Killarney, where there are classic stages to be found. There was also the site of an Escort, going for its third successive win, with 180 horses now on call.
And then there's 14.5 miles of twisty Mowles Gap, in the past the end of the rally for so many.
In those days of Easter 1970, they were dreaming of in-car cameras, of making the sport more exciting for television viewers, and of explaining the challenge to a much wider audience. The hard luck stories that year centred around Adrian Boyd and Cathal Curley, and Billy Coleman did not even make the start of this 5-day event.
By daylight on Tuesday, the 70 cars still running reached Cam Forest, some short distance from Dungiven. There it was sheer disaster for Barry Lee, who was still second and competing in only his third international rally.
We got to the Cam Forest, you know, the special stage there, and everything was going fine up until then. We got about a quarter of a mile out from the stage, and just suddenly the big bang with 4,000 revs on the clock in third gear. And I just got out of the car, you know, I was so choked. Because, you know, I was running number 13 this year, as you know, and this has been niggling me all the time. Though I haven't admitted this because, you know, you just don't do this. I have been, you know, a bit worried and a bit frightened about it.
And so the finish at Larne and a large crowd to greet Roger Clark.
The hat-trick was now complete for that man of few words, Roger Clark, and the now BDA-engined Escort 1600.
Among 10 class winners were James McCosh of Wexford and Arnie Poole of Dublin. McCosh took Class 4 in his Lotus Cortina, and Poole won Class 3 with his Cooper S. The Castlereagh Trophy for the best performance by a driver from the Republic went to Mike Dolan from Moat, County Westmeath, who finished 8th. For the first time in 3 years, the team award was won by Vauxhall Viva drivers, and Dubliners Des Bradley and Paul Gleeson piloted one of them. The Swedes had proved immensely popular throughout the rally. 3 of their crews finished from an original entry of 11. Their appetite for rallying is enormous, and they assure us they'll be back again. Most of the kudos, of course, as always, centre around the winner. Roger Clark at last completes a hat-trick of rally wins, something that's eluded him several times in the past.